HBO have been talking about making a Harry Potter TV spin-off show in the hopes to expand and cash in on the Wizarding World universe. I guess with a view to do what they've done with the Game of Thrones universe, which has a bunch of spin-offs either airing or currently in production, and after having seen the success Disney has had with Marvel and Star Wars and all the content they're pumping out. So what Harry Potter TV spin-off would we like to see? Well, I've had an idea for such a long time about a gritty crime drama set in the Wizarding World. So here's my pitch for it. So we've had the Harry Potter film series, and we've had an attempt at the Fantastic Beasts series. And I was always taught if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. So I won't be saying anything at all about Fantastic Beasts. But I think it's time we had a more mature, gritty drama set in the Wizarding World. One where we don't need the wonders of magic or the fantastical animals and creatures to give us this like childlike sense of wonder. Instead, I want a show that relies on a gripping plot. A show with well-written characters. Characters who are going through gripping, intriguing journeys and developments. A show that would be a good show anyway, but just so happens to be set in the Wizarding World. So my idea is we follow two auras as they solve crimes around the Wizarding World, with an overall arc of the series following a serial killer who they're trying to catch. Each episode may be focusing on a different victim or a different aspect of the serial killer's crimes and murders. Maybe it establishes a really interesting pattern rooted in like mythos around the dark arts. We could get a glimpse into what forensic science would look like in a world full of magic. And also we could get a glimpse into the grittier side of the wizarding community. We could see run-down, impoverished areas. Areas that feel neglected by the ministry. Maybe there are communities where wizards and witches are struggling with addiction to different potions or magical herbs. We could have exploitative, magical, organized crime. I just think it would give us so much cool stuff to explore that the movie franchises don't even come close to. So I mentioned this show would be following two auras, and so the characters as I see them, one of them would be an old hat in the aura's office. He's been there for years. He's old-fashioned, he's rough around the edges, and he takes liberties with where the line is. Honestly, I'm thinking like a Mad-Eye Moody type, but not explicitly Mad-Eye Moody because I wouldn't want this spin-off to tie into the Harry Potter series at all with characters or story. Because tying things in like that and giving fan service, I think really gets in the way of telling a good original story. And honestly, I think trying to make Fantastic Beasts a Dumbledore-centric prequel is really where it's fallen down. So after this aura's regular partner retires in episode 1, he meets his new partner, a young aura fresh out of the aura's academy, and she's quirky and chatty and naive. She's full of new ideas and she is determined to be friends with the Mad-Eye Moody type character. And honestly, I'm imagining her to be kind of like Tonks. But again, not Tonks specifically. So together, the two of them would go off and do their investigations. They'd piece together the mystery and inevitably like butt heads about how to do things. He'd want to do things the old-fashioned way. She'd want to do things her new way. Maybe she even suggests using certain aspects of Muggle technology, and he has like some deep-rooted prejudice and like blood purity issues he's got to work through. And obviously he'd push back against any kind of friendship that might start to crop up between the two. She'd be trying really hard to impress him, and eventually, of course, they'd learn they'd become better auras, and indeed better people, if they just learned a bit from each other and they embraced each other's strengths. So alongside the magical serial killer plot that's going through the whole series, we'd also dive into these characters' personal lives. The Tonks-like character would have issues with her family on one level or another. Maybe her parents are struggling with their marriage. Maybe her brother has been caught up in the dark arts in some capacity. Either way, she's fighting a battle outside of the aura's office as well. Something that eventually her new partner would realize, and that would facilitate him starting to cut her some slack. He, on the other hand, would probably be embroiled in a fairly public trial being held at the Ministry. Perhaps from where he crossed a line in a previous investigation, or maybe something to do with him covering for an ex-wife or his old partner. Either way, it would be to do with him crossing a line in a previous case, and that would allow us to have some moral ambiguity. And not only would we get that interesting moral dilemma, but we'd get to see the workings of a Ministry court. Kind of like a courtroom drama, but with wizarding lawyers. I'd love to see how all that works. And I'm sure, as is always the case in crime dramas like this, the moody type character would spend at least one episode outcast from the Aura's office. Maybe he's been suspended for something, but he'd still be working outside of the law to help them finally crack the case. So the remaining aspect from this show would be the serial killer, which, even though it's not a big part of the whole series, at least season 1 it would be a big deal. And a show about a magical serial killer could take a number of different forms. Firstly, we could get a whodunit, where there are loads of different characters who could be the serial killer, and we as the audience get to play along as the series advances, trying to figure out just who it might have been. Alternatively, it could be a thriller where we don't even see the serial killer until the very end. They're like an enigma right until the moment where they get found out. Or we could have the killer as a character from the beginning, and through every episode we also get their POV, as well as that of the Auras. Like a sadistic game of cat and mouse between the Auras and the killer. And regardless of how the show presents the killer, just think of all the different ways a magical serial killer could operate. The haunting scenarios by which their victims are selected or killed. The fact that serial killers usually take trophies. Imagine what that could look like in the wizarding world. Like, I think the show Dexter did its serial killers really well with their different quirks and their different rituals. Imagine presenting serial killers like that, but in the wizarding world. There's honestly so much to this show idea that I haven't even thought of that would make it so compelling. HBO, call me. Honestly, I think it would be a genuinely interesting, refreshing story to tell in the Harry Potter universe. And speaking of great stories, I ranked all of the Harry Potter books from best to worst in this video here. So if you want to watch it and then argue with me in the comments about my opinions, go and watch that next.